Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you here today. I'm excited to talk with you about brand led success and the future we want. I'm Sandy Skees. I'm with Porter Novelli, and let's dig in. I want to start with two global dynamics that we're seeing in the world that are shaping how brands show up in the world as we are swirling with lots of issues. The first is these new influences, all of the issues globally, both societal and environmental demands that are putting pressure on companies and brands. There are rising costs, we're seeing economic headwinds, and there's this cloud of global conflict. In Europe, you certainly see this more closely than those of us in the United States, but the political turmoil we feel, the political turmoil that's everywhere, this environment of societal, environmental, and political turmoil is affecting brands deeply. It's dynamic and it's pushing new influences and new pressure on brands. Simultaneously, we're seeing the rise of expectations from a broader range of audiences than we ever have before. Everyone in a brand's ecosystem matters. All stakeholders matter. And that can be employees, your existing customers, your future customers, suppliers, partners, the communities where you operate. All of those participate in your success, and their expectations are constantly changing. What's different now for brands in particular is the ability that all of these stakeholders have to exercise their voice and communicate to you, the brand, and to the wider world what their expectations of you are. We call this era we're living in the expectation era. And I want to just take a moment from a sustainable brand sustainability perspective to look at these pressures specifically that are coming to those of us who've been working in purpose, sustainability, and brands for years. The first is from everything we see in working with the large multinational corporations, scale up companies, and startups that we work with, is that climate risk and double materiality is here to stay. What I mean by that is all of your stakeholders are expecting to hear from you not only the way in which your organization, your brand, your company is impacting the climate with your emissions, with the way you use water, with the way that you treat the workers in your factories and in your supply chain. That's the impact you're having on society and the planet. And there is a growing expectation that you can communicate the way in which the climate and society are impacting your business, the way in which you might be seeing climate chaos and extreme weather events impacting and disrupting your supply chain, or when people who are on the move from environmental disasters impact your ability to keep workers in certain locations. All of that is the way in which the climate is having an impact on your business. And everyone from customers, partners, investors expect you to understand and be able to communicate the way that double materiality is working. The second, recent research is saying that executives are seeing the economic headwinds that we're all facing, inflation, the shortage of goods, just the tough economic times are are weighing on their optimism around meeting climate goals. When we talk with clients right now about whether or not they're maintaining their commitment to their climate action, all of them are. They know that they need to keep moving on meeting their net zero goals, in meeting decarbonization goals. But there is growing concern at the C-suite that the economic headwinds are going to make that harder to do. The third is an understanding that there is this massive generational shift happening everywhere in the globe as the millennials age into being parents, being bosses. Gen Z is right behind them, and Gen Alpha is coming into the marketplace. Gen Z and Alpha behind them are markedly different from generations preceding them. They're more climate savvy, they are more diverse, they have more demands from companies around companies and brands weighing in on social issues. They expect it, and they also expect companies to pay attention to and not contribute to climate chaos. And then lastly, fourth, we know that there is a growing set of expectations for equality and equity. And this is true everywhere in the world. That as we are a global community and we're watching more and more communities express their expectation for a seat at the table, for access to resources, for a fair shake, whether it comes to how governments respond to retirement or how governments respond to disasters, there's a growing sense that everyone should be treated fairly. And that's true globally across many different countries. And then lastly, we see it here in the United States, but we're also seeing it elsewhere in the world. This anti-ESG, I'll use the American term anti-woke activism, is real, and it's showing up everywhere. We're starting to see organized response and pushback to companies who've made commitments around climate and decarbonization, and growing pushback from groups that are pushing back against diversity, equity work all over the globe. So these are real issues that are growing and proliferating, and the pressure is mounting on brands. And so how do we in this organization, in this situation, in this environment, what's our response as a brand? And I like to say that where we go back is to purpose. We go back to the reason we exist in the first place. I like to use the word purpose when we talk about the reason that a business exists. And it's a way of articulating your strategy that leverages all your corporate resources in service to a greater good, some part of the commons, that's the environment or society, that you're going to take responsibility for improving and stabilizing while delivering business value. It's through your business you're creating a greater good that goes beyond the profit you'll deliver to your investors or the wonderful products you'll deliver to your customers. There's some societal or environmental good you're committing to participating in. That's your purpose. And when you can express it, it drives value. So here's what a mature, purposeful brand has. First of all, it's this commitment to creating value beyond business. The second thing is there is a say-do match between your corporate rhetoric about the things you're doing to contribute to the decarbonization of the planet or a stable and equitable society. There's a match between what you say you're doing and what you're actually doing. The third is that you have a mature grasp of your role in the world. I think that, the main reason that I began working in the sustainability, purpose, and brand space almost 2 decades ago was the understanding that business at scale has tremendous opportunity for innovation and responsibility for creating the world that we want, for creating the future that we want. And that when business can align all of its resources to deliver an amazing product and some greater good, that's role in the world. When you understand that and orient your business that way, you'll benefit. The fourth dimension of a mature, purposeful brand is that there's some strategic agility. And let's go back to those pressures and the sort of global trends that we're seeing. Purposeful brands understand and have this ability to pivot and address those issues as they're coming at you. And then lastly, mature, purposeful brands can articulate their purpose, and everyone in the organization understands how they contribute to that. Employees do, suppliers do, your customers do, and the communities where you operate understand their role in helping you achieve your purpose, which is creating some greater good through the business itself. When you get this right, we It drives value. And we've been able to correlate and prove that companies who can express purpose through sustainability, and I'm going to describe how these things are all different, what you get is greater revenue growth and higher valuation. We certainly can track greater brand value, both as an intangible asset, but a license to operate in the communities. And I'm going to show you a few companies where you can watch the transformation of the company and the increase in brand value and license to operate in reputational risk mitigation. We know that when companies can express their role in the world, people want to work for you, people stay working for you, recruiting is easier, retaining employees is better. And what that does, that your shareholders will reward, is you have less employee churn. So that means employees, when they're staying with you, your innovators, those folks who are delivering your next generation products, they stay with you. They don't jump ship and move to another company. And so there's more stability, a better innovation pipeline, and you become a greater, your returns are better. And then lastly, we know that when you can crystallize that greater good that you're creating in the world through your business, it unlocks sustainability progress, it unlocks innovation across the entire company, and it helps you address regulatory requirements. So let's just take a minute because I think there's confusion and conflation of these three terms: purpose, ESG, and sustainability. And I want to take a minute and explain the way that I believe they operate separately and importantly together. So, purpose, as we talked about, is that intention to create some greater good in the world through your business. You articulate it. It's not taking responsibility for everything in the environment and everything in society, but the piece of it that is most resonant, congruent, and has synthesis with your business. Sustainability, which we all know is the environmental, social, and economic or growth dimensions of your business. This is where the strategy for operationalizing your purpose comes to life. It says we're going to pay attention to the environmental impacts we have, the societal integration and societal way in which we integrate and interact with society, the way we affect society. We're going to pay attention to that in the context of the growth we want to drive, the value we want to create, the profits we want to create. That's the way sustainability becomes the strategy, because when you work those three things together, you will deliver on your purpose. Your mission is the business that you're in. Your vision is the role you see the company headed toward. So you can see how purpose, mission, and vision work together. You connect it to sustainability. And then ESG is not a replacement for the word sustainability. ESG is the framework, the mechanism with which we measure year on year progress of the sustainability strategy. So inside ESG, these are programs, compliance frameworks, reporting frameworks. It includes the explanation of what you're doing, how you're doing. It includes all the messaging and partnerships and the stories of how you're delivering on your sustainability strategy and how that's laddering up to mission and purpose. I think that the thing that's important here is to remember that sustainability and ESG is similar to the way we think about financial reporting. We all know generally accepted accounting principles is a universally understood way of describing the financial dimension of a business performance. ESG is the environmental, social, and governance mechanism and framework that we can describe the environmental and social progress of a company alongside financial. So that's sort of a landscape of how all of those things work together. When we put purpose at the center of a business, it should drive progress, drive innovation, drive efficiency, drive value through every seat in the C-suite and every department of a company, cascading value out to the communities where you live and operate and work, and beyond that out into the ecosystem and the planet. And I think it's important to understand where sustainability sits as that strategy. It is the responsibility to operationalize the sustainability strategy from every seat in the C-suite. So I just want to spend the last few minutes showing you a few examples of when you get purpose, sustainability, brand value coordinated, you see the kind of results I talked about earlier. So the first is Unilever, and it's a company, global multinational company that we're all used to seeing, and they're held as one of the leaders in sustainability progress. But I look at the outcomes that Unilever was able to prove is in valuation, revenue growth, and a total stock price. So they were driven by purpose. They created their sustainable living portfolio, and it was a way of proving that that set of products outperformed the other products. That when you apply a deep sense of purpose to the product brand, a sustainability strategy for operationalizing it, an ESG framework for tracking, measuring, and reporting on it, they outperformed their other products. And so Unilever was able to see and prove the correlation between a deep sense of who they were as a brand. Each of the brands, like Dove, etc., had a deep sense of their mission, their vision, their purpose, how to operationalizing it, and saw valuation, revenue growth, and stock price increase. The second case I want to talk to you about is Levi's. Again, another global brand. Everyone knows the Levi's story. I like to talk about the way in which they leaned into the social dimension of who they were as a company, social sustainability in their support of being active around gun control, being active around innovation in the way in which they made the jeans, water use, etc. What they saw as the company had started to see a decline, that innovation, that leveraging social sustainability and environmental sustainability saw them survive what was looking like a tired brand, a tired fashion brand, and had become closer to being sort of irrelevant. And we saw them lean into actually rarely both a social dimension and an environmental dimension in order to drive value, connection, engagement by their customers, and leverage that to move them back into recognition as an iconic brand and an iconic fashion brand. Speaking of fashion, this is a company that I worked with to establish their purpose expression and the way in which it is getting operationalized across the business. But Abercrombie and Fitch, again, another global brand, had a reputation from a couple of decades ago as being one of the most exclusive fashion brands. They were very clear that they were only for certain type of customer. They were very clear that their brand and their what they stood for was only for the pretty people. About 8 years ago, new CEO Fran Horowitz came in and she said, "We need to move from this exclusionary stance in the marketplace and become much more inclusive. But how do we do that? How do we articulate it?" And so we came in and helped them look at who they were. And it's across all of their house of brands, which includes Gilly Fitch, Abercrombie and Fitch, Hollister, and Abercrombie Kids. And we looked across, and what we realized, and the way in which the purpose statement became expressed, is we are here with you on every stage of your life journey, from kids to working adults, helping you become who you are. And I remember in working with them that the way in which their creative department, their designers in every line of business deeply understood the power of fashion and of their company to use fashion and culture to drive social change. They do take deeply their responsibility to create an inclusive society. That's their purpose. Create an inclusive society through the fashion they create, the way in which the stores are set up, the way in which they increased size, inclusivity, the way in which they are sort of ungendering some of their clothing lines so that it's not necessarily the binary of women and men, but it's open expression across that spectrum. They're stepping into their role in the world in a completely new way. And so I want to just close by saying here's 3 takeaways for today that I want you to think about. 1, commit to creating value beyond financial returns. Understand this role that you can play in the world. 2nd, examine your own say, do match and make sure that your corporate rhetoric and your communications match and that your operations are actually proving what you say is what you're doing. And lastly, communicate that you understand your role in the world and how all your resources, the way you work your supply chain, the way you manage your operational facilities, the way you engage with your customers, the way that you work in the communities where you have facilities, you understand all of that is working together cohesively to creating a greater good in the world, and make sure you communicate that and get the benefit and value of that. Lastly, I want to just say feel free to reach out to me with any questions. My new book, Purposeful Brands, has a lot of these concepts in it, but I'm happy to take any of your questions. Feel free to reach me. My email is there. It has been a pleasure being with you today. I appreciate the time, and I wish you a great conference.